Hey everybody, welcome to Comic Wow's Wow Factor.
Yep.
Hey, what's up?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm Rick. I'm here from Comic Wow, and we've got Roye Okupe, who is the founder, the creator of YouNeek Studios and the universe that falls within.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit, Roy, if you would, about YouNeek and the Youniverse,
Right.
as it were.
Well, so where do I start? So this is something that I've always had, honestly, at the back of my head. I wanted to create my own characters. I wanted the stories to be inspired by the things that I experienced growing up. Some of the mythology we learned about, Africa, and also African history as well too. But it all started with EXO. That was my first book that I put out there, the first graphic novel, and everything for me potentially hinged on the success of that book. So as much as I had an idea for a universe, I had to make that book work. So in August 2015, I did my first Kickstarter on EXO, and that was really successful. And not only that, I had the project itself featured on CNN, Forbes, BBC, The Washington Post, New York Times. So for me, that was just, it was validation that I had a great idea, not only, for EXO, but creating this universe of, these unique characters. See what I did there?
I did.
But it's been a very rewarding experience, creating the stories and having people email you, reach out to you on social media and saying, hey, like these are great characters. It's something that I wish I had growing up. This is something, and this isn't just people from a particular country or section of the world. This is a global thing. Like I have people buy my books back home in Lagos, Nigeria, Africa, Europe, South America, here in the U.S. So it's been an amazing ride.
Nice. Now you mentioned that this is based on the mythologies and the stories that you were brought up on.
Yeah.
And you're from Lagos, Nigeria.
Yes, born and raised.
Now, EXO, The Legend of Wally Williams, takes place in Lagoon? Or how do you...
It's Lagoon City.
Lagoon City.
So that's a fictional name, but it's just my fancy way of saying the city of Lagos, for the story. But if you read my book and you take a trip to Lagos, you'll be able to see things that you see in the comic book.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's a direct correlation of, what you would see in the city now, although it's set in the near future. So there's some liberties I took, creatively to be able to put different things. But generally speaking, it's one for one. And that was an intentional thing that I did because a lot of times when you hear about Nigeria specifically or just even Africa in general in mainstream media, it's not always necessarily good things. Like you hear about corruption, you hear about, poverty, whatever the case may be. While these things are stuff that we should talk about, there's a different side of Nigeria. There's a different side of Africa that a lot of people don't talk about. Sure. And this is part of the reasons why I create these stories, because a superhero story is an easy way to bring someone in, whether that person is in the U.S. or the person's in, England, UK, whatever the case may be. But at the same time, create these compelling stories that take place in the country that I grew up in, and me showing a side that a lot of people don't on the regular get to see as well.
Sure.
Too.
Now, we all know that superheroes are extremely easy to recognize, and are because they're all over our media here in the United States when it comes to our branding of everything. There's a Batman this, a Superman that, a Spider-Man this.
Yes.
Now, with EXO, did you go the route of the superhero in that capacity with the suit and all that stuff first because you knew that would be an easy catch or a hook to bring more potential eyes on your content?
Yes, I did.
Oh, perfect.
So, and a lot of times, I guess people, some people expect me to say, oh, no, it was, this, unique type of marketing. Like, I knew that coming out with EXO first because, again, before EXO, I had ideas for about 10 to 15 characters that I wanted to launch. But I felt like this character would be the easiest as a flagship character.
Sure.
Because it's, if I were to, speak sincerely, it's the most, it's the easiest one for people to get into and say, okay, what's this guy about? He has a suit. Like, he looks like a superhero. And for me, strategically, I felt like that would be the first superhero that we would come out with, and then gradually go deeper into mythology and African history and and what have you now. And it's, like I said, it's been a incredibly rewarding experience. It's come with its own challenges as well too, of which we will talk about.
Yes, we will.
But yeah, so far so good.
Okay. Now with EXO, you have done some animated shorts.
Yes.
That are extremely visually captivating. I've watched them on your webpage, and I'm like, wow, this is good stuff. I mean, the character movement, everything, amazing. Anything coming out in that arena?
Yes, so we're actively working on a full-length animated movie that's based on EXO, But obviously, that's a long-term plan.
Sure.
And just to make it correct, because a lot of times people think I actually did the short by myself. Okay. Trust me, if I did that, I would still be working on it now for 4 years. So I had a lot of help from different people from like different parts of the world. I worked with some people back home in Lagos, Nigeria, on pre-production. I did most of the post-production myself. Actual production was, took place in again, different parts, just basically people sharing the load and trying to get the project out there as well too. But like I said, the animation. The funny thing is that I actually got into superhero stories through animation. Okay. So I didn't start out reading comic books. Okay. I remember growing up back home in Lagos, and my mom literally had to drag me away from the TV, like watching Ninja Turtles, X-Men, the animated series, the Justice League animated series, and things like Static Shock. These are things that drew me into the superhero genre, and from there I started doing research and get into the comic book industry. So animation is actually kind of like a first love for me. Obviously, comic books are now competing with that because I've been so entrenched in the industry. But yes, animation is definitely something that is of a priority for us to be able to get these characters from the comic books and then to animation, and then hopefully beyond that into video games and some of the other things that we're planning on.
Very cool. I mean, because there's a lot of platforms that pop culture characters can absolutely land on.
Right.
And comic books is a great way to build an IP and a universe.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Which can, again, just like wildfire, go all over the place.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned the whole idea of African mythologies. And you have a couple other characters that are books that you've done, Windmaker and Malika.
Yes.
Now, what can you tell us about those characters that a new reader would find very captivating and would draw them to that?
So it also goes back. Sorry, I always tie everything back to my childhood.
Yeah,
it's like it was one of the most fun times. Now I get to work and do all these things. I don't want to. I'm just okay, that's a story for another day. But just kidding. So growing up, I was exposed to a lot of Greek mythology with Hercules, Zeus, Roman history. And different things, and it wasn't just by through learning through books or going to school and taking history classes, but it was through media. And I've always been fascinated with history from different parts of the world, and I feel like a lot of people too. That's why you have successful movies like 300 or Gladiator, and some of the other things that are based on mythology as well. But one thing that you don't see a lot of is either movies or comics or video games that are based on African mythology or inspired by African mythology. And Africa is rich in not just only mythology, but actually history as well, too. There's so many compelling stories. There's so many interesting folklore. And I just saw it as an opportunity to be able to use that to create my own fictional stories by having something that they're drawn from, something that they're inspired from. And that's how the idea for Malika Warrior Queen and the Windmaker came about. This is the part of the universe that takes place, a bit farther back. Right. And again, that's done intentionally. I have this huge universe, but I don't want to jump into the Avenger thing too early, where it's like, oh, you have all these characters, and then you don't know they're in a team, and then you don't know what drives this character, what drives that character. I'm more focused right now on developing each character in their own series while they're in the same universe, and you see them pop up in each other's books at different times. There is a strong focus on individual stories first to try to establish these characters before you start seeing team up. So, Malika and Windmaker, they take place, like I said, 15th century and back, and the EXO series takes place 2025 and up as well too.
Okay.
But there is going to be a convergence.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because your universe is growing.
Yes, it is.
Expanding because you have
it is.
Fire Frost coming. And
yes.
There's something coming. Is there something coming in 2018 as well?
Yes. So 2018, you would see more of the Windmaker because right now the Windmaker has just an art book. But that art book it's one part art book, but it's also a storybook as well too, because it gives the cool thing about the Windmaker series is that it's kind of like what grounds the entire universe. Okay. So just to give a little bit of a synopsis, the Windmaker, the history of Atala, which is the hardcover that we have out right now, is a story that's is inspired by West African mythology. But what I did is that I reimagined some of these deities as dragons.
Oh, nice.
Which is really cool, by the way, if I may say. But everyone that has abilities or powers in the universe, one way or the other, gets their powers from these dragons. So you have these ancient dragons with these powers, and then fast forward to like the 21st centuries, you're seeing all these people with powers, but they actually some way or somehow have gotten their powers from these dragons. So the Windmaker, I've used it as a framing device for the entire universe to be able to see what happened before all these heroes started getting their powers. And so in 2018, I will go more deeper into his personal story about him as a king, and how he started his kingdom, how he had to fight for freedom from invaders as well, and how he got his own powers as well too.
Man,
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Sometimes I miss the days where I was just promoting the EXO series because that was the only thing. But now I have these. I have so many amazing characters. Granted, we have 3 ongoing series, which is EXO, Windmaker, and Malika right now, and Fire Frost to join in 2019. It's a growing universe. It's a lot of exciting stuff, and I think there's just something about having new characters and not knowing. And again, I love Marvel, DC, Image, Dark Horse. Like I read their stories, and I'm a huge geek for the movies. Like any superhero movie that comes out, I watch. Like I don't even care, bad reviews, good reviews, whatever the case. Sure. I'm all up for it. But one thing I feel like that we have that they don't is we have the sense of mystery. You don't know the backstories of our characters. You don't like. If I go to see a Batman movie now, I know that
you're going to see that pearl necklace break.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? Let's not even get into that. I love BVS. Unpopular opinion, but let's not get into that. One of the things that, like I said, we have that you wouldn't see in some of these mainstream stories is that we have the element of surprise.
Yeah,
you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's coming. You don't know what's been. And I think that's why a lot of people have gravitated towards our content.
And that, as a fan of comics myself and the whole history, like I can sit down, watch a History Channel, and watch it for hours. Right. And when you think about, like you said, there's not a lot of mythology. Coming out of Africa outside of Egyptian mythology.
Yes.
And that's literally less than 8% of the entire continent.
Right.
And then you have all this rich history that you can pull from.
Exactly.
And I look forward to seeing where this all leads in your unique universe.
Yeah.
Now, you also have a part 2 coming out to the Malika story, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Malika Part 2, it's actually live on Kickstarter now, so please go out and support. You can just search Malika Part 2 Kickstarter on Kickstarter.com. It's actually successfully funded. We're on stretch goals right now, so please check it out if you can. But yeah, this story is actually... So the cool thing about Malika is that it doesn't only focus on African history. What is also in there is that you get to see the Ming Dynasty as well, too, which is, an ancient Chinese dynasty as well, too. And one of the cool things that you get to see in the first book and now the second book is that interaction of culture, whereas these 2 great armies, these 2 great kingdoms are meeting for the first time, and it's like, how do they resolve their differences? Right. And then Malika Part 2 actually now throws in this wild card of a new villain, I would say. I can't say too much because I don't want to spoil the story. But then you have the cool thing about Malika's story is that she's such a strong leader, but she's still able to feel like we feel. Like she has regrets, she has sorrows, she has things, that betrayals that she has to deal with, and while being the leader of this huge empire, she has to find her humanity, within all. These contexts of having an internal war and also an external war as well too. Okay. So part 2 actually explores how she deals with that, and also this new threat that just comes from nowhere. Like she gets, if you've read the book, towards the end you see that Malika gets betrayed by someone that's really close to her. Okay. And part 2 explores how she deals with that and how she still manages to fight for her people even though she doesn't want to anymore.
Oh wow.
So like I said, I always try to ground my characters in realistic emotions that you and I feel on a day-to-day basis. So you've experienced at some point in your life disappointment with someone, or betrayal, or not being able to, not feeling like you want to move forward because of a disappointment that you've had, but you still had to pull through. You still had to push through. So while these characters have these superhuman abilities and these superhuman responsibilities at the human level, they're still very relatable, and I think that's one of the things that are so spectacular about the characters in the YouNeek universe.
I love it. Now, you mentioned villains.
Yes.
Now, EXO has like a villain, but an organization that he's up against all the time.
Yes.
And a lot of heroes are, a lot of people reference Batman. A lot of heroes are defined by their by their villains. Do you think that kind of fills this void for your characters as well, that the villains truly help build the character that you are trying to create?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone has heard the saying that your hero is only as strong as the villain he has to face. Well, maybe not everyone, but enough people. Right, and if you haven't, you've heard it now. But for me, writing a villain is usually the hardest part for me of creating a whether that's a script or a superhero story or outline or whatever the case may be, because I don't like to. I like to, as much as possible, stray away from the generic, I'm going to take over the world, Mojo, Jojo, those kind of things. I try as much as possible to stay away from that, because I like to tinker on the line where you have a villain where you almost understand, well, not that you understand why they're doing what they're doing, but you can't get on board with the method as to how they're going about it. Right. So Oniku, which is the main villain in EXO, is I think is one person that kind of embodies what exactly I'm talking about. So you would, from his perspective, you see exactly why he's driven by what he's driven by. But the way he goes about what he's trying to get across is so terrible. Right. So he's the leader of the Creed, right? And they are, I guess the best way to put it would be anarchists. But in their own way, they're actually doing what they're doing for the betterment of the city, for the betterment of the nation. Because in the story, there's corruption in the government that both EXO and Oniku are trying to eradicate. So they're actually going towards the same goal, but they, obviously categorically disagree about the methods as to each one. And the unique thing about that is that, again, no pun intended, or maybe, the unique thing about that is that Oniku is not actively going after EXO. He's not trying to destroy him. He's more like, just stay out of my way, or else you're going to get killed. Sure. And I feel like that's another layer of storytelling that you don't always get to see in a superhero movie or a superhero story. Most of the time, and again, I don't have anything against that. It's more like, okay, the villain is going after the hero, or the hero is going after the villain. Like, these two guys are trying to get to the same point, but they just keep on clashing with each other because of the methods that they're trying to they're using to try to get to where they're going to as well too. So Oniku is I would say, like, for me, it's like just a lot of work being put into trying to get into the mind of someone who thinks the way he thinks, and being able to balance that with a hero that thinks in a different way that you can actually support. But I always put a set of challenges for the heroes as well too, where it's like they make mistakes that again you and I will make on a daily basis, whether that's being impatient, or going after something that you're not necessarily supposed to go about, or because you can't get to the villain the way you want to get to, you start taking shortcuts and doing things like, so all these things are in these characters as well, because I always like to, from the span of graphic novel, show growth in the character as well too. What you see in the beginning of EXO, as you see EXO, which is Wilder Williams, what you see of him in the beginning is not necessarily how you see him at the end. Sure. There has to be growth as well.
Absolutely. And it sounds like, depending on your own ideologies, you can almost see Oniku as a hero in his own right.
Exactly.
And it's kind of that whole phrase of, one man's terrorist is another man's, freedom fighter.
Yeah.
Type thing.
And again, I loved Man of Steel. That may be another unpopular thing to say, but that if you watch the movie, some people considered Zod the hero of that movie. He was trying to fight for Krypton. Krypton was destroyed. Like, he was the last hope of Krypton for the people to keep moving on. But then again, if you look at the way he went about trying to bring Krypton to Earth, he was trying to destroy everyone on Earth just to, bring Krypton. And that's where Superman had a problem with him, and it's like Krypton had its chance. So I feel like those kind of stories are the most entertaining, where it's like you understand why the villain is doing what he's doing, and you can see why the hero opposes. But it's almost like there's this gray area where it's like, who exactly is right here? Sure. But at the end of the movie or the end of the book, you can see why the hero is the hero.
Absolutely. That sounds like, like you said, in any other media in the comic book industry, because most of the characters are known. Right. You kind of know where that's going to go, but with your characters, you don't. You don't know. Yeah. You're going to see that growth, and it's what a refreshing opportunity for any new reader of comics to read something new and not have the, well, he's going to do this because back in issue 47 he did that. Exactly. And I'm going to see it again or whatever. Right. Exactly. That's super cool. Now, let's talk about your background. Right. You said you're from it's Lagos. Yes. Lagos, Nigeria. Mm-hmm. But you went to college here in the States at George Washington University.
Yes, I did.
Tell us a little bit about your experience going to school here in the States, and what degree path did you choose?
I mean, it was amazing. I did computer science both as an undergrad and for my master's as well. So I have a master's in computer science, and now I'm doing comic books. So
that's interesting. How does that translate though? For you who's trying to make a career in comics, how does the computer science translate to your success here?
So, I mean, for me, it actually helps what I'm doing, because a lot of things that I would have outsourced, maybe like web design, or, some things I do with, editing, or, anything that has to do with tech. I think I've saved a lot of money on my end running YouNeek Studios. So that actually translates well. And, for me, initially I was like, well, I've wasted upwards of, thousands of dollars, in school. But, I mean, it doesn't always, it's not that. And, just even going through the educational structure of being in college and being on time with assignments and working in groups and things like that, I can't tell you the value of that right now in the real world. I still think, whatever it is that you're trying to do in life, getting a degree is still very paramount, and it's something that's important, because it gives you that structure. It gives you a lot of things that it prepares you a lot for the real world. I'm not saying that there's tons of people who dropped out of college that found success, but I also think that it's not just like, well, college is useless. I don't think that at all, because there's a lot of things that I use right now that I learned. So, but I mean, just like I said, going through, there was a sense of discipline that I was able to get just by going to college, doing well in school, both in undergrad and my master's, and now being able to run a company, and then do things like accounting, PR, marketing, and just business relations in general, dealing with people. Like, the comic book industry is one thing where if you don't know how to be a good team member, you're going to be forced, or else you're going to be thrown out, because you have to work. No, I don't care if you're coming in as an artist or an editor or a writer or anchor, whatever the case may be. You have to work as part of a team at some point. So I think my time at George Washington University was it was great, and I still use many of the skills that I learned over there.
I love it. Now, the big thing that I've read about you, and I've also I went back and I watched a few other interviews from your past in regards to YouNeek Studios and the characters involved. And your biggest thing that you always talk about is the diversity that is necessary or needed in comics. And you're bringing that, and it's not diversity that there need to be more black characters or anything like that. It's diversity in culture.
Yeah.
I would love to read about Peruvian heroes or more Incan and Aztec and Mayan South American stuff. You're bringing the African nation and mythologies to this content. What was it that really? Was it a see a need and fill a need type situation with you, or was it just I have a story, I got to tell it. This is a platform I'm going to put it on.
Right. Yeah. So for me, this happened in two phases actually. When I first started doing this, when I first wanted to start a company that does animation, comic books. For me, it was just about I wanted to tell my story. Like I want to tell my stories about my characters, and. It was, I think, when I released the first book, EXO Part 1, it became bigger than that. So a lot of people came to me and was like, again, this is something that we need right now in the comic book industry. This is something that we wanted to see more in the animation industry. As a kid growing up, I didn't see a lot of black characters or, black heroes being portrayed in any medium. Sure. So for me, I started to take that as a much more serious responsibility. Because like I said, I didn't necessarily start this company to feel a need for diversity, but it's something that I do now actively. Yeah. Maybe somewhere in my subconscious I was doing it because growing up I did think, watching Spider-Man, watching Batman, I was like, wow, wouldn't it be cool to have a hero running around in Lagos, saving people, or a hero that speaks to some of the issues that we're dealing with, here in Africa or here in Lagos, Nigeria. I thought that would be cool, but to me, it was just a kid just saying, wow, I would like to see a hero, working on my street or saving people on my street. But like I said, after releasing the first book, just to see the amount of positive feedback that I got from people and just people saying thank you for releasing this. And it was happening subsequently as I released book to book to book. And like I said, ever since, I've taken it more as a responsibility to not only create more of these, but to pay more attention to the stories that I put out there. And it's not like I was doing crap initially, but now it's like there's a huge responsibility on my shoulder to do it right, do my research right. Because even before I started creating this book, I personally didn't know much about my own history, like African history or my own mythology. Right. Like I said, I knew more about, Roman history or, Greek mythology. I knew more about those things growing up. So starting this company was a huge thing for me, not just in terms of creating my own stories, but just being enlightened to some of the things that I missed up growing up. And now I'm in a position to not allow the next kid who's growing up in Lagos, Nigeria, or here in the United States. And it's not just about, African children or black children or whatever the case may be. I think, just putting out a story and a mythology that's inspired by African history or African mythology is great for everyone. Everyone gets to learn about different cultures and backgrounds. And I feel like that's one thing that brings us closer together. So for me, again, I don't want to get too violin-y here, whatever.
I'm getting a little a little emotional here because I can tell you that I've been on every continent except for Antarctica. I will get there. I'll get there eventually.
Get a jacket.
Maybe. I'm a polar bear. But our world, though large, is super small.
It is, especially now with the internet. Like, it's tiny.
Exactly. But the wonderful thing about it is we don't know everything about our own planet, about all the cultures. No. Someone here in America who doesn't know about, tribes in Brazil still that are like, they're tribal. They're not, in our tech world that we exist in. And all the mythologies that occur down there, and now in everything. Same with Africa, India, China, everywhere. There's so much cool content and stories that can be told, and the fact that you're bringing that to the table for everybody to dig into.
Let me tell you another cool story about exactly what you're talking about, and the power of multimedia, and whether that's comic books, video games. Like I said, my first exposure to American culture was through animation, was through seeing Spider-Man swinging in New York City. Like that's how I know. That's how I got to know about American culture. Right. And fast forward when I got here, I got this game, Assassin's Creed. I think it was which one? I think it was 3. I think 3 was before Black Flag. Mm-hmm. But Assassin's Creed 3, I think. And if I'm wrong, just correct me in the comments. But that was the one that was based around, U.S. history and during the
Revolutionary War.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I literally, while playing the game, like after something had happened, I would pause and go to my computer and research. Mm-hmm. Like I was pushed to actually learn more about American history. Because here I was in this game, I was interacting with George Washington. Right. So I just thought that was so cool. Right. And again, other games have done this, and it doesn't have to even be directly like where it's like you're actually playing the history. Like Far Cry, they did I think it was Far Cry 3. That took place, I think, somewhere in India as well too. And some of the things in the game were actually tied into Indian mythology and Indian culture, and that also pushed me to do research as well while playing the game. Like I would see something and I would pause and say, hey, this sounds like a cool thing. Let me go research it. And that's the kind of person that I've always been. And I feel a lot of people are like that. It's like when you either watch a movie or, you read a comic book or you play a video game and you're exposed to this whole new world, this whole new culture, even though it's fictional, it's inspired by something. Absolutely. And I think that drives people to go ahead and if they like it enough to go ahead and do more research about that thing. And that's what I'm really trying to do with these books is that at the core they're great stories that are meant for everyone. But at the same time I'm exposing you to this whole new world and this whole new universe with inspirations from different things that you probably haven't seen before or heard about before. And it's my hope that if you enjoy the story, you want to know more about it, whether that's you picking up another person's book that's about African history or African mythology, or you're actually going to buy a book that's about that history or watch a movie that's based on that. So there's a lot of power in multimedia, in comic books that we don't. I feel like sometimes we forget how powerful the medium is and how it affects people and how it drives people to want to know more about these different characters. So for me, it's just a blessing to be able to wake up every morning and put out stories like this that people can be attached to. Again, people from all parts of the world, not just one.
I love it. Now you mentioned that it wasn't it didn't happen because you initially went into this with the weight of this on your shoulders, but because of, again, the positive response that you've gotten, and you now feel that it is your duty to bring this to light and bring all this these American amazing characters to light, to people to enjoy and get them into the culture that you are familiar with. What do you find being with your background and your education and everything, what do you find being the hardest challenge in creating and getting this information out there to the mass?
I mean, I think the biggest challenge is the obvious one. Whereas, I mean, obviously the comic book industry is dominated by the bigger publishers. But I just don't like to use that excuse about because I mean Marvel has been around for almost 80 years now or more.
Long time.
Yeah, so Marvel started from somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of times, and I always tell this to a lot of people, and just entrepreneurs in general. Like, we want to start something, and you look at it. You look at the best person that's doing it in your industry, and you see how far they are, and you think, I mean, I can never get there. But if you look at some of the biggest companies now, let's just take Disney for instance. Walt Disney, he started a company obviously, and now Disney has almost everything. It's like sometimes I have to wake up and check. I mean, have they bought my apartment or whatever? But but it started with Mickey Mouse. It started with just one guy drawing one mouse.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So he started from somewhere. Yeah. So I always try to tell people, you have to find your Mickey Mouse. What is that one thing that you can start from and scale up from there? And to me, while the hardest challenge is trying to find my market, trying to find my own part of the market in an industry that, like I said, is dominated by these bigger publishers who inspire me every day, by the way, is I just look at it as, like my first book, EXO, that was my Mickey Mouse. And I released it, a couple hundred people supported on Kickstarter. And for me, I took that and multiplied that and kept going. And in 2 years now, I have 5 graphic novels.
That's awesome.
So 2 years ago, I had 1. So as much as it is a challenge, I try to always look at it in a positive way that everyone started from somewhere. And if you do something consistently enough, well enough, and you put your heart into it, eventually it's going to get somewhere. Right. It's going to get somewhere. Like, people that find success aren't just the most talented people. It's the people that, not only have the talent, but they have the endurance to be able to outlast everyone else who's given up. Right. So if you're out there, if you have something that you want to do, please keep on going after it. Believe in yourself, and eventually you can get to the promised land, so to speak.
Right. And one of the funny stories behind the whole comic book industry is, Marvel had been around years, but Stan Lee was in his, just turning 40 when he created Spider-Man.
Right, exactly.
He was 40. I'm just over that. And it's like, I think about that every day. I'm like, something today could be the thing that is your legacy.
Exactly.
And that legacy that could inspire a generation.
Yeah. And generations. And if you dig deeper into Stan Lee's story as well too, there was a time he wanted to quit, and I think that was during the Comics Code thing, where I guess there was censorship about comics, and I think if you watch one of his interviews, his wife told him, like, okay, what would you create if you didn't have any boundaries? Yeah. Right. And I think that's when he went out and created Spider-Man, and the rest is history, as they say. So, but can you imagine what would have happened if he gave up right then and there?
Yeah, 7,000 characters wouldn't have been made.
You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So that's how I always look at it every day. And this is a tough business to be in. Like, it's rewarding because you get to create your stories, but it's tough. Like, it's tough competing out there and, day to day, going through it. Like, I've had times where, I go to bed crying, like a man, of course,
Right,
but that's very important, But I always look at it as like, if I give up today, what is it that I was supposed to create tomorrow that millions of people are not going to be able to see because I decided to give up? Right. Or what is it that people who look at my stuff and say, I can do this as well, what are they going to say when they see tomorrow that I don't do this anymore? So you always have to look at it beyond yourself sometimes too as well. And as hard as it is, just push on through.
Yeah, like, again, too, because when you're talking about mediums, and you mentioned how any medium can inspire you to become better educated on certain things, but comics as a medium is one of the biggest inspirations for a lot of kids.
It is.
To become a better reader. Mm-hmm. When I was in grade school and I started picking up comics, and I'd read it and I'd be like, what is this word?
Exactly.
To the dictionary.
Exactly.
Oh, okay, I get it now. It makes sense.
Exactly.
And that made me want to read, John Steinbeck's, and Hemingway and all these other amazing writers that aren't comic books, but I would have probably shied away from it because I didn't have the...
Exactly. You're 100% correct. 100%.
So, and that's, like you said just now, it's like, if I stop today, what child may I not inspire to be a better reader or educated, whatever the inspiration from your source. Yeah, it gives that individual.
Definitely. And like I said, when you are doing something that has, these things, these books, this company as a whole, it means everything to me. Not just because of what it brings to me, but because of what it does for everyone. People out there who love what I do, and people who send me messages every day saying, thank you for doing what you're doing. Like it's become so much bigger than me now that every day I wake up, I don't just see it as, oh, what is it that this is bringing for me? It's more like, okay, I have to do this because of, the people out there who are constantly supporting, people like you who root for me, or people, that have put me on these massive platforms. Like I said, I mean, in my first 6 months, started putting out EXO, I was on so many different media platforms that, it's just mind-boggling to be able to, back-to-back, like CNN, Forbes, BBC, The Washington Post. So everyone that has had a positive effect on my life, everyone that has kind of like nudged me forward, put me on this blog or invited me to this con or, invited me to this panel or whatever, like everyone has their hands in my success. Yeah. So it's not just about me anymore. It's about everyone who has pushed me to where I am right now to be able to now take this to the next level.
I love it. All right, so for everybody out there that's watching us, we went through a lot of interesting stuff. Yes. That's a lot of backstory on what is a truly unique universe.
Pun intended.
Absolutely intended. Now, for those of you that are watching, if you're a retailer and you haven't picked this up, it is available to be put on your shelves, right?
It's in Diamond. Yeah, it's in Diamond. You can get all the graphic novels, EXO Part 1, EXO Part 2, Malaika Part 1, and then obviously next year, Malaika Part 2 as well. Everything available through Diamond as well. So please have it in the stores. A lot of people go into the comic book stores and they just can't get it. So,
So if you're a consumer, if you're someone that would love to pick up this book and all the books in the YouNeek Universe, please go to your retailer and let them know, hey, I saw this. I would like to read this. Yes. Please order it for me.
Yes.
But if they want to learn more about the universe you're putting together, what's the website they can go to?
Yeah, so you can go to YouNeekStudios.com. That's YOUNEEK Studios.com.
Love it. So there you have it, everybody. That is another wonderful wow factor right here at Comic Wow in Timonium, Maryland. Roy, thank you so much for coming in. We appreciate it. And remember, go to Kickstarter and check out his current Kickstarter.
Yes, please.
And if you are not currently a backer, back it. And if you can't back it, share it. Maybe you might have some friends that will find it interesting and would like to back it as well. Definitely. And I know that some of the stretch goals you have are where you're going to be putting books in the hands of people that can't get it.
Yes. So one of the stretch goals is that we're going to be donating a minimum of 20 books to a Boys and Girls Club local. So that's something that we've done in every single Kickstarter. Is one of the most rewarding parts is to be able to go and just give these kids, like you said, books that they can actually read and be entertained by at the same time. So definitely check out the Kickstarter. A lot of great stuff on there.
Perfect. And again, go to his website, check out all the cool content there, and you get all the updates of what's coming out in the YouNeek Universe.
Yes.
I've been your host, Rick, here for Wow Factor, and we will see you at the comic book shop. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Bye.
If you liked that video, make sure to subscribe. And if you're into comics, toys, and more, check out comicwow.tv for tons of content.